All right, and we are back. So we're going to continue. This is part 2 of chapter 14, the internal processes. Again, we are using the Pearson book, McKnight's Physical Geography and Landscape Appreciation. That's where all this information comes from, as well as many of the PowerPoint slides. All right, here we go. So we're going to continue on with volcanism. So volcanic peaks. So now we're getting into some of the different types of volcanoes. Now, we finished up with a figure on the part 1 of which ones were, larger, smaller, and so on. And now we're actually getting into each one of those. So volcanic peaks, shield volcanoes, layer upon layer of solidified lava flows. Little pyroclastic material, which means no real bombs, things like that. And the Hawaiian Islands are a great example of that. Now, these are also the low silicon type volcanoes. So they just kind of blow around, spurt around, and just bubble up and what have you. Now, Hawaii got a little carried away a couple years ago. A couple years ago, yeah, they had some bombs, but nothing like you see with the large composite volcanoes, or the stratovolcanoes, where you're talking about shooting tons and tons of material into the stratosphere. Okay, these are just smaller volcanoes that tend to boil around, and they create islands. Okay, composite volcano. Now here's the mother of all volcanoes. This is the big bad boy. Okay, higher silica lavas, andesite type lava, not the basalt, but the andesite, form symmetric, steep-sided volcanoes. Pyroclastics from explosives, so when they explode, they go. I mean, it goes everywhere, and it'll shoot tons and tons of material into the stratosphere, which blocks out the sun and causes global cooling. Okay, again, cooling off the temperatures. Whereas the shield volcano, that stuff boils around and usually ends up in the ocean, which causes global warming. All right. So anyway, pyroclastics from the explosive lava form alternate with non-explosive flows. So you get a little bit of both. The composite, depending on how big, you can get those huge basalt fields, okay, or andesite, but lava fields. Pyroclastic flows produce steep slopes, and the lava holds it all together. Now, we can see here with this composite, remember, they always show you that the crater's right here on the top of the volcano. Not always true. Mount St. Helens blew out the side. So again, it takes a point or a joint of weakness. But as you can see, you have these different veins, dikes, seals, and what have you, and fissures that run up and out. Lava domes, masses of very viscous lava that do not flow very far. Lava bulges from the vent, and the dome grows by extension from below. These are just smaller volcanoes. Some lava domes from inside the composite volcanoes. So this more or less is something smaller that boils around after the composite's blown its top. So anyway, it just kind of forms on the inside. Cinder cones. Not as big as explosive as a stratovolcano or composite volcano, but just as much. This is a little brother, okay? So he's explosive. He can blow a lot of stuff in a lot of places. And as you can see, we've got all kinds of pyroclastic bombs and stuff coming out of here. Okay. So anyway, he's going to take it. He's going to shoot. Now he doesn't have the veins and stuff. Basically, it's a straight shot right up the pipe here. Okay. That's what that's called. That's the pipe. All right. So it's a central vent, and that's where the material comes straight up and out of the top. So whenever you see a crater on the top, it's more or less one of these type of volcanoes. Okay. Again, basaltic magma is common. Slopes from the pyroclastic materials are generally found in association with other volcanoes. We're going to talk about a caldera here in a little bit. And guess what? You find composites and you find cinder cones. Oh, there we go. Calderas. All right. So, volcanic peaks, calderas, result from a volcano that explodes or collapses or both. We've already seen the Yellowstone video. It's went off, 16, 17 times. 3 in the last, couple million years. And this is where you have a big magma chamber, okay? Huge magma chamber right here. And it fuels all these other volcanoes. So here we go. We got a composite or a cinder cone here. But then we have these other volcanoes in other places. Eventually, and that's why they say when one volcano goes off, they all go off, and that's because they're all being fed by this here magma chamber. So this one may pop, then this one may pop, this one may pop, and then eventually the whole thing goes up, and then the surrounding area sinks back into the magma chamber. Okay. Immense basin-shaped depression larger than original crater. Crater Lake in Oregon is an example of this. Okay. Some of the volcanic hazards we find, and I've posted all these PowerPoints, so if my face is in the way, you can pull these PowerPoints up on Canvas. Volcanic gases, mainly water vapor, but can cause acid rain and alter global climate. Again, it gets up in the stratosphere, blocks out the sun, and then you get cooler conditions, global cooling. Lava flows cause immense property damage, so we get these big basalt and andesite fills. Eruption clouds, gas and ash material clouds that extend up to 60 kilometers in the atmosphere. And then they drop these large pyroclastic rock fragments called bombs. Okay, so you can see all kinds of stuff going on here. One of the things we're going to look at here in a minute is what we call a lahar, this mud flow right here. Okay, what is a lahar? All right, so a lahar is a mud flow that's associated with volcano. You have to remember, most of these volcanoes are extremely tall or high in altitude, high in elevation. All right, they're talking 15,000 feet, whatever, 20,000 feet. They're big. They're a whole mountain. Okay, and mountains have snow on them. And you superheat that snow is going to, well, melt, right? And when it melts, it turns everything around it into, especially if you got ash and everything else there, you're talking about a huge mudslide. So you need to know that a lahar is a mud or debris flow. All right, pyroclastic flows, avalanche of hot gases and material up to 100 miles an hour. So if you think you're going to outrun it, you're not. But here's what happens. It shoots up and then it hits that tropopause, right? And remember, you can't extend a whole lot further up there, right? So what happens, you get these downdrafts, right? And all of a sudden, all them gases and everything come running back down the side of the mountain, kind of like a Santa Ana wind coming off the peaks around California. And it pushes all that material down. And if you think you're going to outrun it, you're not. Everything gets covered in ash, and it's superheated. It's glass, all right? Again, the Yellowstone video we saw showed just how much, glass was in there. So you're not just getting hit with superheated ash. It's full of glass, and that glass is not going to let you breathe. You will die. Again, the volcanic mud flows or lahars result from heavy rain and or snowmelt during an eruption. And again, here's this pyroclastic flow. So here we go. We get our wind, and it shoots up, and then it hits kind of that tropopause area, and then boom, right back down the mountain. So monitoring volcanic hazards, research to locate previous pyroclastic flows and lahars. We've done a lot. Believe it or not, they have tested here, and the Cimarron River has materials left over from the last time Yellowstone erupted. Yeah, they found ash in Oklahoma rivers. So it goes to show you that ash made it this far. So again, wiping out croplands, wiping out pasture lands in its way here. They have tilt meters measure the slope of a volcano to look for swelling and monitor earthquake activity. So seismology, the whole works, because usually you have some rumblings before you have explosions. I love this picture because this just goes to show you right here just how many volcanoes there are. Okay, boom, Mount St. Helens. I was living in Oregon right before it went off. Mount Hood, Mount Jefferson, Three Sisters, I've been there. Newberry Volcano, Crater Lake, right? And so anyway, it just goes to show you just how many are in that area. And again, think about all of these volcanoes going off at one time. Wow, what a spectacular show for the 4th of July, right? All right, igneous features. And these are intrusions, not extrusions. So igneous intrusions, rocks form beneath the Earth's surface, penetrate the crust. And we have these are called plutons, schemes for classifying. So here we go. Here's my big magma chamber. And when it solidifies or dries up, it's called a batholith. Okay. And then we have these sills and we have dikes. The dikes usually lead to, let me turn my pen back on. The sills here are horizontal. Dikes are vertical and usually lead to fissures. We've got laccoliths. Laccoliths are magma chambers, okay, that feed off this big magma chamber, okay? And so here we go. Here's our cinder cones right here. Here's my big composite volcanoes right here. Again, this is why whenever we were watching the movie, they said, you know, you get one explosion a day later, you get another, and then another, and then another, and it ramps up. It's because of that huge magma chamber right there. It's fueling all of the volcanoes. And then after they all go off, that whole area is going to sink back into the magma chamber. So we got laccoliths, we got batholiths, volcanic necks, all right, and dikes and so forth. Some more batholiths, large subterranean body indefinite depth, important in mountain building. Stocks, similar to batholiths, but much smaller. So stocks are kind of like the laccoliths, maybe another name. Laccoliths, slow-moving viscous magma forced between horizontal layers of rocks builds up mushroom-shaped masses. And we saw that on the previous slide. Volcanic necks, pipe or throat of an old volcano that filled with solid lava. So these are all different things associated with volcanoes. Here are some of those batholiths that you see. Look at some of these. See how large of areas these cover? These are huge magma chambers. Remember, 3 out of 7, that's 7, supervolcanoes are in North America. So it goes to show you, we've got a lot of volcanic stuff going here. All right, sills, long thin body whose orientation is determined by a pre-existing rock. Because you got to remember, you got those horizontal layers within the rock, and this stuff penetrates and forces its way in between those layers. Okay, dikes, vertical sheet of magma thrust upward in the pre-existing rock. Again, any cracks, joints, it's going to find its way up. Veins, molten material forces itself into smaller fractures in pre-existing rocks, take irregular shapes. Again, any little crack. One of the ones we want to talk about here too are once this all solidifies and dries, just like soil, there's air pockets, porosity. And these small little air pockets are called vesicles. And you need to remember that. This, I believe, and this is kind of similar to the picture that I'm using for the thumbnail for this slide, is Spanish Peak in Colorado. But wait a minute, Colorado ain't volcanic. Must have been at one time, okay? Because that's a volcanic sill right there. All right, here's that picture again. So anyway, here are our dikes, all right? We got some sills going on, batholiths, laccoliths, the whole work. So there we go, fissures erupting, just a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, okay? All right, folding. So now we've done with volcanism, now we're on to folding. Two primary types of diatrophism. You need to remember that word. Or tectonism, folding and faulting. Results when rocks is subject to lateral compression. Okay, boom, we're pushing it in and we're pressing it together. It can take place on any scale. Okay, it can vary in complexity, and there's two types: anticline, an upfold, and a syncline, a downfold. So kind of like our waves between our crests and waves when we were talking about incoming solar radiation, whether it's gamma or whatever, short wave versus long wave, we got anticlines and synclines like this. Okay, it causes a rolling or a warping. Okay, and the overthrust fold we'll get into here in a minute. All right, so here's some examples. We got our sediment layer right here. Okay, and we start adding compression. Here's my syncline. Now, the first one that comes off, when it comes off, that first thing, it's a monocline, because it's only one-sided. Syncline, anticline, syncline, and here's my overthrust. That's where it kind of overrides it, warps it around, okay? And there we go. Now, if you'll notice here, valleys in the middle, hills or ridges on the outside, okay? So this is uplifting, okay? So again, here we go, anticline valley right here, syncline valley. Here's an anticline valley because it's up higher, right? But we get ridges on each side. Faulting occurs when the rock breaks. So folding the rock does not break. Faulting the rock breaks. Okay? So it occurs when rock breaks accompanied by displacement. You get shifting. Okay? Occurs along zones of weakness in a crust or fault zones. These are also known as fault lines. So begin as a sudden rupture but can result in large hundreds of kilometer faults over millions of years. Now, there's different types of faults. We already talked about the transform fault. It just slides back and forth. Here we're talking about broken faults with displacement or shifting, okay, and fault scarps. So here we go. Here is our upthrown block. Here you can see the direction of movement of the blocks, okay, and we got a down throw, and here's my fault line. A lot of times you're going to find with these fault lines, they're associated with streams. Yeah. Why? It's a fracture. Water can get through, okay, and so they're usually pretty straight. We got our hanging wall and our down thrown block, and so we have shifting there. You need to make sure you look at this for your test. 4 primary fault types. Here we go. We got the normal fault. The blocks are basically moving past each other, one up, one down. In a reverse fault, same thing, except these blocks are kind of pulling away from each other. These blocks are being pushed towards each other, therefore pushing one up over the other one. Okay? And then my thrust fault, one is pushed up again over the other one. And there, my strike slip fault or transform type fault is right there where they slide back and forth. Now, we see faulting all the time, we just don't know it. And how do you see it? Well, look at this fence line and this sidewalk. Okay? Trust me, the guy wasn't drunk when he was laying down the bricks, okay? That happened over time. So little by little, there has been some movement there on a fault line, which has caused that fence to begin to warp as well as the sidewalk. It's displacing it. It's moving it from its original position. Now, some of these take forever. They'll move. Maybe that fence was put there 50 years ago and it's only moved that much. It really hadn't broken the fence. It just warped it, okay? But there are other places where they've done studies and the displacement is in the range of multiple feet, like 20 feet of displacement, where people went out and said, hey, just in the last 15 years, we have 20 foot of displacement. So there's no time relationship to this of, oh, that's 2 centimeters per year or 1 centimeter. It depends on the fault and where you're at. And so you got to take those things with a grain of salt. When you see fault, it could be a major one, lots of feet, and these things can move and then stop. So they may move for a while and then just quit moving. Maybe the pressure goes somewhere else, something. But that's how faults work. All right, so fault produce landforms. Tilted block mountains. One side of the fault block is tilted steeply relative to the other. You do need to know both these for your test. The horst, uplift of a land block between 2 parallel faults. What you need to remember is the horst is the up part and the graben is the down part. Okay, graben, the down thrown land block between 2 parallel faults. Again, here's my ridges, both sides, valley in the middle. Okay, so make sure you remember the horst is the up thrown blocks, graben is the down thrown blocks. And again, basically your anticline, syncline, right? Syncline, anticline, there we go, okay? So anyway, please remember that because you'll see it again on your test more than likely. Some other features that go with faulting, and I told you, you're usually going to find streams, but a lot of times these streams are displaced. They don't make any sense. So here's my stream coming down my hill here, and it abruptly makes a 90-degree turn. Why? Because it's hit a fault line of weakness, and then it continues on downhill when it finds its route, okay? Small depressions in the trough known as sag ponds. Here is a sag pond. A lot of time you find these little sag ponds. A lot of times these are adjacent to other larger rivers because here's your actual valley down here. This is my valley, okay? So your valley, here's your meandering river or straight river or braided river, whatever you got. Let's call it a braided river. Let's say we're in Colorado or someplace. It's a braided river. So anyway, there's my braided river. And these streams here can run all the way down the length of this. And they kind of act as a, Your main stream is here, but they act kind of as a supplemental stream, especially if there's snow melt or something like that. So if you got extra rain, snow melt, they may fill up. These are offset drainage channels. And then these shutter ridges, which are the outside edges. Faulting. Some of the things that go with it are earthquakes, vibration of the earth resulting from sudden displacement. And that's when one block moves rapidly from another block or over another block, and it causes displacement. Energy is released by the earthquakes, moving several types of seismic waves, which is why we have those secondary waves, right? So all of a sudden you have your earthquake, and then we have our aftershocks, right? Constantly have aftershocks. Oh, they've got 20 aftershocks. And some of the aftershocks are almost as strong as the original earthquake. And that is because there's still some movement going on, all right? So anyway, energy is released by the earthquakes, moving several types of seismic waves that originate at the center of the fault motion. Here's the thing. The focal point where the earthquake actually happens, or the displacement, I should say, displacement is right there. Your epicenter is that point on the earth directly above, but on the land surface directly above the focal point, okay? And then the ground above the origin experiences the strongest joint is the epicenter. So that's where the strongest movement's going to happen, okay, the jolt. There are two types of waves, P waves, which are primary waves, and S waves are secondary waves. Your primary waves are the stronger waves, secondary waves are the weaker waves, all right? And again, basically aftershocks. All right, earthquake magnitude relative to the amount of energy released. All right, this is a little hard to explain. It's on a logarithmic scale of the 32nd power. So what does that mean? Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, somebody got a 3 and it barely shook their house, and we got a 4 and it destroyed the entire city. Well, that's because it's on a logarithmic scale. So a 3, or let's put it at 0. A 0 is no movement. Okay, 0, I'm going to try to draw here, is no movement. Then we have a 0.1. 0.1. That's 32 times stronger than the 0. 0.2. 32 times stronger than the 0.1. So every point you go up is 32 times stronger than the point before it. That's why you hear somebody saying, oh, well, I got a 5.1 and they got a 6 or whatever, and their whole, house fell down. It's not just a 0.1 or 1.1 difference. It's 32 times point. Okay? So a large earthquake has a rating of 7 or higher. So if you get into the 7s, you're doing damage, and a lot of it. The strongest recorded earthquake is 9.5 in Chile. That has actually been surpassed now. I believe it was 2 years ago, and I'm wanting to say it was still Chile, but they had like a 9.7 or a 9.8. So that even has been surpassed, okay? Shaking intensity. Intensity of the ground shaking not consistent during the earthquake. And that's because it's giving off pressure and relieving pressure and so on. And then we have the Mercalli intensity scale, which is basically the same as the scale you're looking at now. It's just, it tells the intensity, okay? Earthquake hazards, most damage from ground shaking. Liquefaction of most sediments, landslides, water movements in lakes, oceans, tsunamis. Okay, so a couple of great topics to go over here. So what is liquefaction? Basically quicksand. So let's say we got a sandy, silty environment with some water. If you walk on it, it could be basically, pretty solid. And then all of a sudden you get some shaking. Animals and stuff. And this has to do, if you get a chance, Google snowmass, Colorado, or snowmass mastodon. They found a bunch of mastodons and stuff, and they said, okay, how did these, animals die? Because they all died around this lake. They believe it was due to an earthquake. Okay, so what happened during the earthquake? They were sitting there watering around this, this area. There was some water, and it began to shake, and their feet began to sink in. The shaking stopped, but they couldn't pull their feet out. So they literally just died in place. For all of you that have ever been to a beach, think about it like this. What happens when you wiggle your feet? You sink in the sand, right? And if the water gets out away from you, try to pull up. You can do it because you're stronger and it's only your feet. It's a small area. But if you're wearing a shoe or something, it'll suck your shoe off, right? Same thing, okay? Liquefaction. So it's a shaking that causes displacement. You sink in that, and then when the shaking stops, it solidifies around you, okay? And then my other favorite topic is tsunami. So this is out in the ocean. This is a displaced fault line. Like I said, you get subduction stuff, you get that torquing. Something's got to give eventually somewhere, right? So we have these tsunamis out there, which are these big tidal waves, right? Big tidal waves associated with the displacement. The displacement is different. The displacement is a earthquake, okay? It is that faulting. It's an earthquake. The tsunami is the displacement of water or the tidal wave, okay? Now, if you're out in the ocean, you're just sitting there floating around, you're not going to feel a tsunami, okay? It's just going to be like a bloop. It's just a little wave, just bloop. Because you're way out in the ocean. There's a lot of water out there. To displace it, you're not really going to feel it. But as that water comes closer to land, it begins to pack up on itself. So what do I mean? Well, the land coming up to a beach is not flat. Okay, it comes up to an elevation. So you got all this water out here. Okay, and the tsunami, again, that displacement, because we got rid of that pressure, it sucks all that water out, right? All the water gets sucked out. And then it's released. And all this water is in this just piled up. And as it piles up, it starts moving back in. And as it moves in, the wave gets higher and higher and higher. Okay? As you move all that water back up that elevated or angled section of the shore. Okay? So it's going to pile up on you. And you always see these pictures, you know, a couple years ago, you know, they had the huge one, what was it? It wasn't Java, but anyway, they had one that, you know, killed hundreds of, 100,000 people or whatever it was. Huge. People are always running away from it. Now, I know other people are going to be watching this on YouTube, so you got to understand this is me being me. All right? I'm one of those jokester type fellows. I'm not saying this will work. All right? But I always watch all these, videos of people trying to move, run away from, a tidal wave and they're getting killed. Tidal waves as big as, the Sears Roebuck building in New York or whatever. You can't run away from that. And all that water hits you, bam, you're done, right? So I've always said that if I ever get in a position where I'm facing a tidal wave, I'm doing the opposite. I'm not running away. I'm running straight at it, okay? Now, hopefully I catch it before it starts capping, because if it caps, you're toast. All that water slams into you, it's like a brick. However, if you think about it, what do surfers do? Surfers go under a wave, right? I'm a scuba diver. How do I get out in the ocean? I go under the wave. I let the water work with me, for me, not me against it. So, I'm not saying do this. I'm not saying by any means it's going to work. It's not going to save your life. I don't know. All I'm saying is I've seen too many people die running away. I'm running at it, okay? And I'm going to run straight at it, and I'm going to dive under that as best I can, and hopefully the power of it will shoot me right out the other side, and I'll be sitting there just back floating, enjoying my life. All right, all these processes are interrelated. Example of Glacier National Park. Was below sea level for millions of years. Part of Oklahoma was also below sea level for millions of years, okay? So yeah, we got the Permian Sea that was in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, we're not going on the field trip, so you're not going to see it. Vast amounts of sedimentary rock. Oklahoma. Igneous activity added variety to the sedimentary rock, so they had some volcanoes to go with it. Igneous intrusions created a silt and numerous dikes, tremendous mountains, building and associated uplift of combined lateral pressure, so they've got folding, faulting, sedimentation, and volcanic activity. The whole block moved by overthrust faulting, known as Lewis overthrust. Again, had Precambrian sedimentary rocks over Cretaceous. And here we go. Look at these huge, beautiful mountains here, right? So anyway, that's Chief Mountain. Here's the Lewis overthrust, so you can see how it's overthrust. Again, you got sedimentary rocks here, and they've had some volcanism and what have you to go with it, all right? So there we go. There's our faulting. So this has pretty much taken care of this particular video. All right, so again, this is part 2. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll be back with chapter 15, and have a safe day. Stay coronavirus free.